Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be connecting a Django project to a Dockerized MySQL database. To be specific, as we start, we are not going to be Dockerizing everything. We are only going to be Dockerizing MySQL database. So we are going to use a project that we have been working on. So this is the project, and currently this Django project is connected to the default database, as we can see here. So these are the configurations that we will be altering so that we can have the database connection that will connect to the MySQL database container. So we are going to divide this demo into two, whereby we are first of all going to create a MySQL container. Then the second part will be doing the necessary configurations and the testing bit. So the fact that we are doing this locally, so these are the same settings or steps that are to be followed in a production environment. So let us see how to go about it. So as we mentioned, the first thing will be setting up a Docker container, creating a MySQL Docker container, and you need to ensure that Docker is installed on your system. So in my case, I have Docker installed in my system. So this is the local environment. So even in production environment, you need to ensure that Docker is installed. I have linked the guide on how to set up Docker, to be specific on a Linux environment. Alright, so once we confirm that Docker is installed, then we need to run one command that will create as the required Docker container. I'll be running one command, which is one of the various methods that we can use to create a container. Remember, we can create a container by running a command with the necessary arguments, or create a Docker file whereby we define the various components of our container. But in this case, we are just going to use the command. To understand the command that I want us to use, I'll paste it here temporarily. We are going to delete it from here. So this is the command that we are going to be using, and let me just go through it so that we can understand what is happening. So basically, we are going to run a container, docker run, and this argument here, -d, is meant to run that container in detach mode. So detach mode simply means that it will be running in the background. Unlike, for instance, what we have here, whereby we are able to see real-time logs. So these will be running, but we will not be receiving logs on our terminal as it is. Then we need to give our Docker container a name, which is this right here. It's not mandatory, it's optional. You need to give it a name so that at least you can be able to identify that container among other containers that you might create. Then we have the environment variable, whereby we give our database a name. We need this name so that we can also be able to direct our application where to create tables and all that. So for us to be able to access that database, we need a database name. We need a database user, which is the one we have given here, and that user requires a password. So that's what we have as MySQL password. And all these options could be optional, but then remember, we need to give a MySQL root password. So this is the say the master password that will be used to access the general database environment. So we refer to it as an environment variable, that is MySQL root password. Then we also have this mapping here, whereby by default MySQL is to be accessed on port 3306 within the container environment. But because we also want to connect to that database outside the container, we need to map it to a port, and preferably we use the same port. But in a case whereby you have multiple MySQL containers and this port has already been mapped, then we are free to use a different port. So we can choose a different port, 3307, 08, or any other open port that we are able to use. Then another thing that you need to do is that you need to create a volume. So this volume ensures that should this container be destroyed, then you'll have a backup of your data. Otherwise, if you miss this part, then destroying a container means your data is destroyed together with that container. So this is very important as it creates a persistent volume to store your data, so that whenever you create a new container and you map it on this volume, then you are sure to get the data that was being used by the previous container. Then in here we mention the name and the version of the MySQL image that we want to use. So the MySQL is the name and latest is the version. So we have other versions that we can go with, but for now we are going to be working with the latest version. So things that you need to keep in mind are these details that you mentioned here: the MySQL database, the user, and the password, and of course the port, because we need to reuse this in our settings.py file. So for the purpose of this illustration, I wouldn't be requiring to have a persistent volume to store my data, so I'll be removing this right here. But in a production environment, remember to have that line included. Alright, so everything else looks good to me, but you can always change the database name, the username, and their password, and of course the root password to what you'd like to use. So these are just for demonstration purposes. Alright, so I'll be cutting this and I'll be running that in this section here. So let me just paste it, then press enter. Alright, so in my case, remember I have gotten this output here, but the reason why I got this output very fast, it was supposed maybe to take a bit of time, but it's because I already had MySQL latest image already pulled on my system. For instance, if I have Docker images, so one of the images that we can see is MySQL with the tag latest. So basically this tag is the version. So if at all this was not existing on my machine, on my local machine or in your production server, then it would have started by pulling that image first, then running it. But in my case, since it was already existing, it has used the available image. Otherwise, in your case, it might take a minute or two before you get this output. So what this output means is that this was a success, and to confirm that actually our container is running, we just need to have docker ps, and here we go. So there is an illustration that our container is up and running. Otherwise, if you do not see your container here by just running docker ps, then probably for some reason that container did not start successfully. So you can check under docker ps then -a, and you'll be able to see a list of the containers that have already been stopped and those that are in an active state. Alright, so if all goes well, we should have our container running, and we are able to tell that by just running docker ps, and we see our container here. Let me just expand this. So we are able to see our container with the name my Django MySQL, the name we gave here. Alright, so let me clear the screen. Let me have docker ps. Alright, so this is what we have, and we are done with stage 1 of creating a MySQL container. All right, so the next part will be doing the necessary configuration on our project here. Let me save. All right, so the necessary configurations are ensuring that we have the necessary settings here to connect to any MySQL database, not necessarily a Dockerized MySQL DB. So the first thing when setting up or connecting our Django project to a MySQL database, we need to install the necessary dependencies. Remember, the current dependencies may not necessarily support a connection between our project and MySQL database. So what we need to do is that we need to install two dependencies. So let me just stop this one, then install the dependencies from here. All right, let me clear the screen. All right, so one of the dependencies that we are going to install is py mysql. So we have pip install py mysql. So let me press enter, be closing that, and within some few seconds we have that installed. The next dependency is cryptography. So let me paste it there. So we have pip install cryptography. Right, just give it time to complete. Alright, so once we are done with installing the two dependencies, basically these are the two key dependencies that are required to create a connection between our project and MySQL database, whether Dockerized or server-based database, or even a remote MySQL database. The next thing that we need to do is that in the project folder, remember this is basically the folder that has our settings.py file. So we need to add some two lines of code, and we are going to add them under this file here, init.py file. So all we need to do is we need to do that. So we need to import py_mysql and also add this other line here. Once we do that, let us save that, and in here we need to rerun our development server. All right, and we see that the server is happy. We are not receiving errors. Just ignore the warning that we are getting here. All right, so the next section will now be replacing the settings for our local database or our SQLite3 database by MySQL database connection settings. So I'll be pasting some lines of code here. So one, I'll comment out this. In your case, if at all you don't need them in the future, you can just delete all these lines here. All right, so I'll be adding those configurations here. Let me add them here. Alright, so these are the settings that we need to create a connection between our Django project and our MySQL Docker container. So basically all you need to change or adjust here are the database name. Remember, this is the same name that we used. So let me just have a quick reference on that. Let me have that. Okay. Alright, so this is the command that give us this MySQL container that we have here. So let us look at the MySQL database. We used DjangoDB, so that's the same name that we should have here. Then we also have the user. We have Django user here. Ensure that that is the same name that you have here. Then for the password, we have user pass. That's the same name that we used here. Then for the host, we are also going to maintain localhost. Then for the port, so this port is the port that we have here. So we exposed the default MySQL port to an external port, 3306. So what we have here is what should reflect at this point. then everything else looks good. So the only things that you need to adjust to match what you have here are the 5 lines here. Once you confirm that that's okay, then just save. All right, so we see here that immediately after saving, the changes, we have 33 unapplied migrations. So that means that our project is now reading from the MySQL container. So what we need to do is to do the migrations. We need to do the necessary migrations. So in here, I just need to stop that server, and we do that by pressing Ctrl C. Then to do the migrations, we need to have Python manage.py, then migrate. And we see that migration is happening. Then the next thing we can do is creating a super user. Python manage.py, create super user. Okay, in my case, I'll just use my name there. I don't need the email. For the password, I use a simple one again, and just to confirm that. Right, once that is done, then we can run the server. So what we can try accessing the admin dashboard. Use the same super user login details that we used, and here we are in the Django admin dashboard. So we can move ahead and try to access the current database that we have. Now we can have Docker. We can have Docker exec. Then we have interactive shell. Then mention the name of our container. So there's the name, and we need to have bin bash. All right, so in here we are in the MySQL container, whereby we can easily run MySQL, then the username. So let's pick up the username from here. We have DjangoDB. Then for the password, let's use the password userpass. Okay, that didn't work. All right, so let me try using the root password. All right, so the root password works. I think that is the one that has access to MySQL database. So the first command was to just give us access to um, the MySQL environment, and once we do that, then we proceed to access the MySQL interface. So in here we can show databases. I'm not sure if that's correct. All right, so in here we can talk of use Django DB. Right, so then from here, once we are able to show databases, then we can talk of not sure if this is the right command, show tables. All right, perfect. So we see we have the tables that have been migrated. So in here, maybe we can try accessing this model here. Let's see if we are able to see anything. So we can talk of select all from that. Let's see if we're gonna get anything. Perfect. So in here we can, instead of selecting all, we can select username, then probably date joined, and which other one, let me see. Okay, all right, then let me talk off from that. And of course we see, okay, we don't have the joint. At least we have the username of the user that I created as a super user. So in case you needed to do anything else from your database on this end, then you can do that from here. and I think it should reflect, if at all you are able to run the required MySQL commands, that should reflect on these dashboard. And remember, this is the same setup that you do in a production environment. So that marks the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video, drop your thoughts in the comment section, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.